This is a video about all the struggles that I had trying to replace the WR250R with something that was a little bit lighter and something that had a little bit more power. So back in 2014, I bought a WR250R with like 1,000 miles on it. I think I paid like $4 grand for it. Over the course of 3 years, I put 7,000 dirt miles on that bike. Most all of it was dirt. And it was a really, really great bike. There's a review video on my channel. But as the years progressed and I got better and better at riding, as much as I love the bike and the absolutely fact that there was absolutely no maintenance to do to it other than change the air filter and change the oil and maybe put some brakes in it, the fact that it was really heavy and kind of underpowered, it was okay in the beginning of the year. I had a lot of fun on the bike, but as the time went by through the season and it got to the end of the season in fall, I was struggling with the power and the weight and wanted something better. Wanted something with more power, wanted something faster. I just wasn't getting the same hard-on that I was getting in the spring out of the WR250R. So at this point I figured, well, I'll try a KTM. So I bought a 2012 KTM 500 EXC, original owner, super well cared for bike. Got on it and the power was like instant and I was in love. There was so much power, and it was a really good handling bike. It was a little twitchy at high speeds, which is common on those. So I put about 25 hours on the 500 EXC, and what I learned after about 15 hours is that all that power that I had gained from going from a 250 to a 500 seemed the same. It was exhilarating for that little bit of time, even though the 500 EXC probably has 3 times the amount of raw horsepower that WR has, WR250R. It just wasn't worth it, and I really, really liked the bike. There are a lot of things I liked about it, but unfortunately at, like, I want to say it was about 60 or 62 hours, the valve seal started leaking on it, the bike started smoking, and this was a bike that had been really well taken care of by me and the original owner. It was pretty much immaculate. So that kind of turned me off a little bit, and I'm not saying anything bad about KTMs. They do make great competition bikes, but I really believe that the valve seals were going out on that bike, and that was a manufacturer defect, but because it was 8 years old, there's nothing you can do at that point. Long story short, I decided to sell the 500 EXC and buy a brand new 2019 CRF 450L. Little did I know, I had bought it early in the spring. Little did I know that this bike was really restricted from the factory with emissions. The ECU was locked, the pipe had a catalytic converter in it, and it was really, really twitchy and hard to ride at slow speeds, and I just absolutely hated it. And it's only because the bike is super lean from the factory because of emissions. So I ended up buying a new ECU and a pipe and a header and a bunch of other stuff. It was probably almost, I want to say it was about $1,700 to get that bike to run right. And once I got it running right, it was a really good bike. It had really great handling. I really liked the power delivery. The suspension was okay, but I just still wasn't happy. It just wasn't something I wanted to keep around. So back on Facebook Marketplace we go, and I end up picking up, well, I sold the CRF 450L and ended up picking up a 2015 Husqvarna FE250, which is also made by KTM. I really like the motor on the FE250. It was a really good bike. I probably put 30 hours on it. It was really, really awesome in single track. It cruised out nicely at 40, 50 miles an hour, not a lot of vibration. don't really have a whole lot of negative stuff to say about the FE250. It was a really great bike, but again, it just wasn't what I wanted, and it wasn't what I wanted to keep around. So then, spring 2020 comes, and I bought a brand new 2020 WR250F, bought the ECU for it, bought the pipe for it, a couple other things, and this was an amazing handling bike, but it just had way too much power. The number one reason I got rid of that bike was because it had too much power, and it took a lot to hang on to in tight situations, even though it was a really, really, really good bike. So as much as I love the WR250F, I decided to get rid of it before I got hurt on it, and maybe just try going back to a 250, because all in all what I had learned is I have more fun on a 250 than I have on a 450, which is not for everybody. So I ended up selling the 2020 WR250F, and back on Facebook Marketplace I went hunting again for a YZ250FX. The YZ250FX is a non-street legal competition bike. Comes with electric start, kickstand, 18-inch rear wheel. It's a great, great platform to start a dual sport build on. So what I did with mine was I added a headlight, a tail light, a brake light, a mirror. That's literally it. At some point I'm going to have to put a 89 dB or a 92 dB pipe on it. I'll probably go with the FMFQ4. So I bought the bike, it had 111 hours on it, and right now it's got about 128. So that's about 17 hours, and this is the bike that I have been looking for to replace the WR250R. It's significantly lighter, it's got significantly more power. The handling is it's almost as good as a 2020 WR250F. I mean, you get your nuts up on the tank on the corners, and this bike just rails. I mean, in fact, in single track and stuff, obviously it's better than the 450 because it's lighter. So the bike I ended up finding on Facebook Marketplace is a 2015 YZ250FX. It has the electric start and the kick start. I can't really say anything negative about this bike in the 17 hours I've had it. I absolutely effing love it. The suspension, the handling, the way the engine delivers power, how much fun it is to ride, the fact that it can be ridden on single track, it can be ridden on 2-track, forest roads, pavement. I took the bike up to 83 miles an hour and it was still slowly climbing on stock gearing. I think I could have got maybe 86 out of it. The bike did come with a Trail Tech, I think just a basic Voyager that shows your speedometer and your trip meter. So that's another thing that you would need if you wanted to do a dual sport out of this bike. But man, if you got a WR250R that you love, or a CRF250L that you love, or a DRZ400 that you love, and you want something that's more dirt oriented, that's going to have more performance and put a smile on your face, the YZ250FX, from all the previous bikes that I've ridden, is a great replacement for any of those dual sport bikes. And granted, there's going to be a little bit more maintenance. I did check the valves on the 250FX when I bought it at about 114 hours, and one intake valve was tight, one exhaust valve was loose. The shim kit's $60 online. It shows you in the manual how to shim the valves. It's not a big deal. You can drive a car, you can shim valves, you just have to take the time to sit down, read the manual, and learn how to do it correctly. But other than a little bit higher maintenance, you're not losing anything from going to a WR250R to a YZ250FX, but you're gaining so much more. Now, to be honest here, I'm not a fast competitive rider. I'm mostly just a trail rider. I'm almost 40 years old. But this YZ250FX I have taken on clay motocross tracks. I have taken it on sand motocross tracks with 1 foot deep sand ruts. I've taken it on single track, 2-track, forest roads, pavement, gravel. I live in a town that has well over 100,000 people. I've spent hours just cruising around town on it. I've taken the dog for walks. I've ran down to AutoZone to get parts with it. It's amazing how versatile it is for being a competition bike, that you could literally stiffen up the clickers a little bit and go out and race this thing. So, super amazing machine. When I first got the YZ250FX, there was only one thing I didn't like about it, which I actually really grew to love, and that's the crisp throttle response. A lot of people say it's twitchy or lurchy, and it kind of is. It's like it goes from 0% throttle to 10% throttle with nothing in between. The more and more I rode the bike, I just learned to use a clutch, and I heard so many people talk about that on Thumper Talk forums, like, you gotta use a clutch, you gotta use a clutch, you gotta use a clutch. And I thought, no, I don't want to use a clutch, I hate it, I don't like this throttle response, this is too twitchy and too snappy. But as I forced myself to ride the bike, over I'd say about a period of 10 hours, I got in the habit of just feathering the clutch a little bit if I didn't want that power delivered to the back tire. And now that I've finally got that figured out, and I feel like a novice rider again, that aggressive, crisp EFI is so awesome when you want to blip over a log, or crack the front end over a rock or something, or wheelie over a mud puddle. That power is just like right there, and I absolutely love it. I hated it in the beginning, but if you get one and you think it's a little twitchy, just put some time on the bike, give it a chance, and ride it. Hopefully this video finds somebody that's got a WR250R, a CRF250L, or a DRZ400 and just isn't sure what direction to go. Granted, as I said before, the YZ250FX is a great replacement for any of these bikes. It is not street legal from the factory. There are ways to get a license plate for a YZ250FX. Just do some hunting around on Google on how to get a dirt bike licensed in your state. One more thing I wanted to add is that the older YZ250FXs had the same cams as the WR250F, so it was a little bit milder cam. It made the motor a little bit easier to control at lower speeds. I know the 2021 YZ250FX has the same cam as the YZ250F, which is the motocross bike. So the 2021 is going to be probably a little bit more racier, less friendly down low, maybe not as good as a dual sport or a trail bike. So I don't know if the 20s are the same, but if you're going to get a YZ250FX, the 15 to 17 with the electric start and kickstart, even though it's an older bike, it's almost the same chassis. You can pick them up for $4 to $5 grand used. One more important fact is the Yamaha 250FX has a tuner that you can buy from Yamaha for like $300, and you can plug it into the bike and you can look at how many hours it's got, and you can do all kinds of mapping changes and all this jazz. What I found out that I didn't know is that the hour meter that's in the ECU on the bike can actually be reset by the power tuner. So if you plug in a power tuner and it says it's got 64 hours, that doesn't mean jack. So if you're not confident about looking at a bike and telling if it has 20 hours on it or 200 hours on it, try to find somebody that you can take with you that knows what they're looking at. And yeah, pick up one of these 250FXs and go have fun.